The late afternoon sky over the rural village of Ijanla was heavy with clouds, the kind that warned of thunder and flooding rain. The air hung thick with humidity, and the once calm breeze had turned into sharp gusts that rustled the plantain trees. In this quiet corner of Ogun State, where goats roamed freely across red clay roads and the air often carried the scent of roasting maize, life moved slowly until the rain came. Amina Yusuf wrapped her scarf tighter around her head as the first drops began to fall. She was just finishing her usual walk home from the Ijanla Youth Empowerment Center, a small one-room facility where she volunteered her afternoons teaching orphans and vulnerable children how to read, count, and speak proper English. Her long, floral-patterned wrapper brushed the muddy ground as her sandals slapped gently against the earth. She clutched her old umbrella in one hand and a cloth bag of books and yam in the other. She was halfway through the old footpath that cut across the thick bushes behind the central mosque when she heard a soft whimper. At first, she thought it was the cry of a baby goat caught in the rain. But then the sound came again, clearer, closer, and undeniably human. She turned toward the sound and peered through the slanting rain. Underneath an iroko tree, almost hidden by the swelling foliage and drenched to the bone, sat a little boy. He couldn't have been older than 6, his tiny frame trembling in the downpour. His clothes, though muddied, told her something instantly. This boy was not from the village. His polo shirt, though now soaked and wrinkled, bore the insignia of a luxury international school. His skin was fairer than most children from the area, and he had no shoes on. Amina's heart squeezed. Who would abandon a child in this storm? She dropped her umbrella and ran to him. Kneeling in the red mud, she gently placed her hands on his narrow shoulders. "Omomi, are you okay?" she asked softly, switching instinctively to Yoruba. But the boy flinched at her touch, eyes wide with terror, his lips quivering. I'm lost," he mumbled in English, his voice fragile like a leaf in the wind. "Where's your mummy or daddy?" she pressed gently. "I don't know. I was in a car, but it stopped and they left me. I want to go home." It was all she needed to hear. Without hesitation, she wrapped him in her scarf, picked him up, and cradled him against her chest. The boy clung to her like a drowning child to driftwood. He was cold, dangerously cold. His skin had taken on a pale shade that frightened her. Amina walked through the downpour for nearly 15 minutes, each step weighed down by soaked fabric and squelching mud until she reached her modest home at the far end of the village. Her house, built from sun-dried bricks and painted in fading turquoise, stood alone on a patch of land where she grew cassava and hibiscus. The roof leaked in places and the windows groaned in the wind, but it was home, clean, safe, and full of warmth. She lit a kerosene lamp, stripped the boy of his wet clothes, and wrapped him in the clean, oversized t-shirt of her late younger brother. Then she heated water over a coal stove and bathed him gently, speaking calm, reassuring words in both Yoruba and English. She prepared a small bowl of hot amala and egusi soup and fed him slowly. At first he refused, eyes still darting toward the door, but hunger overpowered fear. And soon he was eating with his small fingers, careful but hungry. After the meal, he sat curled up on a foam mattress near her cooking corner, wrapped in 2 faded blankets. Amina watched him silently from across the room as he drifted into sleep, his small chest rising and falling. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know why or how he had been abandoned. But she knew one thing. That boy was not from here, and someone somewhere was looking for him. She walked to the corner where she kept a small altar, an old stool covered with white cloth and cowrie shells, beside which her Quran rested. She knelt down and whispered a quiet prayer. Ya Allah, if this child is brought to me for a reason, guide me, protect him, and give me strength. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside Amina's house, under her roof of patched metal and prayer, the boy slept soundly, safe for the first time in days. Morning came with the bleating of goats and the rooster's call echoing across Ijanla. The storm had passed, but puddles still littered the red earth roads and a fine mist clung to the leaves. Inside her home, Amina Yusuf stirred awake to the smell of damp clay and the weight of unspoken questions. The boy was still there, curled under the blanket, but his eyes were open now, quietly watching her as if trying to decide if she was real or just a kind dream. She knelt beside him, brushing a hand over his forehead. "Good morning, my dear. How do you feel now?" He nodded. Then his lips moved. "My name is Ife." It was the first time he had said his name. Amina smiled gently. "Ife, that's a strong name. Do you remember your surname? Your daddy's name?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Okonkwo." The name hit her like a soft wind, familiar, powerful. Okonkwo wasn't a common name in Ijanla. In fact, there was only one Okonkwo that she, or anyone in Nigeria, had heard of in recent times. Chief Chuka Okonkwo, the billionaire founder of West Gold Motors, Nigeria's largest automobile company. A man whose face appeared on television, as often as the president's. Could it be? No, surely not. Yet, Amina wrote the name down in a small notebook beside her mattress. "What else do you remember, Eve?" He looked down. "We were in a car, big, black, with TV inside. Then it stopped. Daddy wasn't there. 2 men said we were going somewhere, but the car turned into the bush. Then they were gone. I walked, and walked, and—" Rain. Tears filled his eyes, and Amina reached for him. His small hands found hers, clinging to her fingers like lifelines. Her heart tightened. By mid-morning, she wrapped Eve in a dry hoodie and took him to the village. Police post. A tiny building with rusted windows and 2 officers who spent more time swatting flies than taking statements. Officer Kehinde, a broad-chested man who liked to chew cola nut while giving advice nobody asked for, squinted at the boy. "You say his name is F.A. Okonkwo?" he asked, scribbling lazily on a notepad. "Yes. He says he was in a car, and he was left near the highway. We need to report this. Something isn't right." Kehinde glanced at his partner, then leaned back in his rickety chair. "Amina, we'll call the regional office, but Lagos is far, and you know these big men don't. Like village people asking questions. If it's really that Okonkwo's son, they'll come. They'll come with helicopters." Ife sat on Amina's lap, quiet but alert. She gently smoothed his hair. "I don't care who his father is. He's a child, and he needs help," she said, firmly. The officers agreed to take a photo and send it to the district headquarters in Abeokuta. Amina insisted they radio it out to larger stations and send word to Lagos. But days passed, and no one came. By the end of the week, Ife had settled into a rhythm. He followed Amina around like a shadow, helping her fetch water from the borehole, sweeping the dusty compound, and even sitting beside her as she taught at the community center. The village children stared at him at first. His accent was different, his skin lighter, his knowledge of the village games non-existent. But soon they warmed up. He made them laugh with his impressions of cartoon characters and his drawing. Skills mesmerized everyone. He was especially fascinated by cars. With a broken piece of charcoal, he sketched vehicles in the sand, sleek sedans, massive SUVs, and what he called engine bikes. His favorite was a drawing he called Baba's Special, which had tinted windows and golden rims. "You really like cars, Ife," Amina said one afternoon, smiling as he sketched. "I want to make them when I grow up. Like Daddy." That name again. Amina felt it in her chest. She had tried Googling Efe Okonkwo missing, using her old smartphone at the local internet shop, but network reception in Ijanla was slow and updates were rare. Still, A gut feeling gnawed at her, something powerful. One afternoon, Amina went to visit Mama Yemi, the village's oldest living widow and a woman known for sensing things before they happened. As they shared ground nuts and peeled oranges beneath the guava tree, Amina told her about the boy. She left out the name, Okonkwo, but described everything else. The old woman listened in silence, her faded eyes scanning the skies. "My daughter, you are not just a helper of orphans. You have a spirit that draws destiny close. That boy didn't come to you by accident." Amina looked at the sky too. But what if the world he came from comes back for him? Mama Yemi smiled. Then be ready to remind them of who cared for him when they didn't. That night, as Ife slept beside the charcoal stove, Amina sat on the edge of her mat, looking at him in the dim lamplight. She had never been a mother. Her engagement to Bashir had ended tragically when he died, in a crash on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway. She had buried her grief in the work she did for children. But now, this boy, this lost, mysterious boy, had entered her world. She knew love was dangerous. It attached you to what could be taken away. But as she watched him turn in his sleep and murmur her name, Auntie Me, she knew it was already too late. The skyline of Ikoyi, Lagos, was glowing with high-rise glass towers, helipads, and the gentle purr of wealth that never slept. In one of the tallest penthouses in Nigeria, a sanctuary of mahogany floors, imported marbles, and bulletproof glass, Chief Chuka Okonkwo stood by the window in a white agbada, unmoving, gazing out across the lagoon. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His only son, Ife Chuka Okonkwo, 6 years old, was missing. Chuka's phone buzzed again. That was the 10th call from the Inspector General himself, giving updates that said everything and nothing at once. "We are narrowing it down, sir. We believe the driver was working with a domestic insider. We've traced the car to somewhere outside Abeokuta." None of that mattered. None of it brought his son back. Behind him, in the sitting room, several men in tailored suits stood silent, his closest advisors, lawyers, and a few security heads. The air was heavy with unspoken fear, not because Ife was missing, but because they all knew how dangerous Chuka Okonkwo could be when powerless. He finally turned. "My boy, my own blood." "Taken like a stray goat," he said slowly, voice steady, but his hands trembled. "And nobody saw anything? Nobody heard anything?" "Sir," said Gubenga, his head of security stepping forward, "we've interrogated the driver's wife. He received 2 large payments from an offshore account. We believe Ife was taken to pressure you over the West Gold merger with the European investors." Chuka gave a bitter laugh. "So they think they can use my son to negotiate?" He walked over to a golden-framed photo of himself and Efe at a luxury car expo in Geneva. Efe was laughing, pointing at a red Ferrari. It had been just the two of them for years, after Chuka's wife, Lillian, left for the UK and never came back. She had claimed he was too married to money to be married to her. Maybe she was right, but Ife had been his redemption. His reason for building, for waking, for breathing. Chuka's jaw tightened. He had grown up in Onitsha with nothing, the son of a petty trader and a midwife. The streets had raised him with fists and hunger. He had fought his way into the world of automobile importation through grit and fire, launching West Gold Motors from a second-hand Peugeot shop. No man could take his son from him and remain standing. Search every bush, every riverbank. Comb every road from Ibadan to Ogun. If I have to tear this country apart to find my son, I will. The days were growing warmer, and Ife had started smiling again. Really smiling. He played football with the other boys in the dusty fields behind, the community center. His laughter echoed through the village like morning bells. He called Amina Auntie Mama and had begun telling everyone she was his best friend. Yet Amina knew his time with her was running out. Too many people were now talking. One evening, Pastor Joshua, a kind but curious man, visited her compound with a parcel of cooked rice. "Sister Amina, this boy, are you sure he's just lost? There's something about him, his language, his manners. He's not like our children." Amina nodded. "He remembers his name, and his father's name. I reported it to the station. Still waiting for someone to come." The pastor frowned. "You may want to prepare. If what I've heard is true, his father is not just any man." Amina looked at Aoife, who was drawing a car in the dirt again. "I know." That night, unable to sleep, Amina returned to the internet cafe. This time, the power was steady and the network stronger. She typed Ife Okonkwo missing boy into Google. The screen loaded slowly, and then her breath caught. There it was, a headline on a major Lagos newspaper site, "Billionaire's son. Abducted by trusted driver. Nationwide search underway. Ife's face, clear, innocent, unmistakable, stared back at her. Tears filled Amina's eyes. She looked again at the child beside her, eating roasted groundnuts and humming a tune. She had grown attached to him. His sweetness, his questions, the way he looked at her like she was his entire world. But he wasn't hers. And now, his real world was coming back. Chief Okonkwo's personal helicopter touched down in Abeokuta the following morning. With him was a small convoy of heavily armed guards, a media liaison, and a new regional security chief. But it was a phone call from a retired inspector in Ijanla that changed everything. "Yes, sir. A woman named Amina Yusuf found a boy under a tree after the last storm. Matches the description." Chuka dropped the phone. "Ijanla," he whispered. His aides looked up. "Sir? Prepare the cars. We're going to Ogun. Now." By the next day, Ijanla village was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. 3 black Range Rovers, 1 security van, and a sleek Lexus SUV rolled into the square in a thunderous convoy. Children ran barefoot alongside the tires. Market women dropped their tomatoes and peered through the haze. Out stepped Chief Chuka Okonkwo, tall, regal, wrapped in white linen, his eyes scanning every face like a hawk. He said nothing. Then a small boy, peeking from behind a mango tree, yelled, "Uncle, that's him! The man from the picture Auntie Amina was watching on the computer." Gasps filled the air. The crowd parted slowly as Chuka walked toward the path that led to Amina's house. He had not even reached the door when she stepped out, dressed in a modest wrapper and an old blouse, her scarf loosely tied around her head. There, eyes locked, and for a long, impossible second, everything around them froze, because they had met before. The silence between them was more piercing than any scream. Amina's heart thudded against her chest, loud enough that she was sure Eve could hear it where he now stood by the window, confused. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the man she hadn't seen in 7 years. Chief Chuka Okonkwo, the father of the boy she had found, the man who once called her Mi Amor, the man who had destroyed her life. The air was still as the villagers watched, puzzled. Some whispered behind their hands. Others stared, wide-eyed, not understanding what bound the billionaire to the quiet, humble teacher who lived in their forgotten town. Amina broke the silence first. Her voice was calm, but her soul trembled. "So, you finally came?" Chuka's eyes darkened. "Amina, it's really you." She nodded slowly. "And the boy you lost is inside my house, sleeping safely." The way his shoulders dropped told her he hadn't even dared to hope for that maybe, deep inside, he thought his boy was gone forever. He turned, emotion rising in his eyes, but Amina lifted her palm to stop him from rushing in. Wait, Chuka froze. You don't get to just walk in. Not after everything. He took a step back, blinking. I didn't know. If I had known. You were the one who— Would you have come faster? She snapped. Would you have flown in sooner if you knew I was the one who saved your son, Chuka? Or would you have sent more lawyers to make me disappear like last time? His face twisted in pain. You think I meant for things to end like that? You ended me. 7 years earlier, Amina had been a bright young legal intern working for a multinational firm in Lagos, fierce, principled, and headstrong. That's where she met Chuka, then still building his empire. Their connection had been undeniable. Forbidden, yes. He was separated, not divorced. But she had fallen, and fallen hard. She remembered the nights, the soft jazz in his car, the handwritten poems, the dreams he whispered against her cheek. And then she got pregnant. She had expected fear, but nothing prepared her for the silence that followed. Then the legal threats, the hush money, the non-disclosure agreement delivered by his legal assistant like a grenade. I cannot let this ruin me, he had said. I'll take care of you, but this cannot be public. And just like that, he disappeared. She lost the pregnancy from the stress 2 months later. She quit the firm, vanished from the world, found solace in Ijanla, where no one knew her name or her shame, until the day she found Ife. Chuka stood in front of her, older, heavier with power, but clearly shaken. I didn't know you lost the child, he said softly. You never asked, she replied, equally soft. I've changed, he said. I've regretted what I did every day since— You built an empire and raised a son, Amina cut in. I built a new life with broken pieces. Just then, a small voice called. Out, Auntie Mama? They both turned. Efe stood barefoot at the door, clutching his teddy bear. When he saw his father, his eyes lit up. Daddy! And like a flash of lightning, he ran into Chuka's arms. Chuka fell to his knees and embraced his son, holding him tightly, burying his face in the boy's shoulder as he wept openly, loudly, like a man who had finally found his breath. The villagers stood still. Many had never seen a billionaire cry. Later that evening, Chuka sat on a wooden stool in Amina's modest home. No air conditioning, no marble floors. But there was warmth in every corner. Drawings on the walls, herbs hanging from the ceiling, pots of food gently simmering. I owe you more than I can say, he said quietly, his voice still hoarse from emotion. You owe Ife a safe future, Amina replied, eyes on the boy now asleep again beside the coal stove. Chuka's gaze lingered on her. And I owe you an apology. She looked up. Not money, not favors, but the truth. I was a coward, Amina. You were the first woman who saw me beyond my wealth, and I betrayed that. I betrayed you. She said nothing. The pain in her chest was both old and fresh, like a wound that never fully healed. You're stronger than I ever imagined, he continued, raising someone else's child, after what I did, protecting him like he was your own. I didn't do it for you, she said sharply. I know. That's why it means more. He leaned forward. Let me take you both home. Come back with me. Let me do right by you this time. Amina scoffed. Lagos isn't home anymore. This village saved me when you left me for dead. I don't mean Lagos, he said. I mean, with me. With Ife, as a family. She stared at him, stunned. The man who once exiled her now asking her to return, not just into his life, but into his heart? Could she forgive that easily? Could love survive so many scars? Word had spread. Some villagers celebrated Amina's good fortune, saying her destiny had finally found her. Others warned she was walking into a lion's den. Pastor Joshua prayed. For her. Mama Yemi simply said, The past always returns when your future is watching. Back inside the house, Amina stood, walked to the window, and stared at the moon. She thought of the unborn child she lost. She thought of the boy now sleeping safely in her care. And she thought of the man behind her, rich in gold, but bankrupt, in trust. She closed her eyes. Her next decision could change everything. The next morning broke with the sound of rooster crows and the murmur of early market traders setting up along the dusty road. But inside Amina's compound, time seemed suspended. Amina had not slept. The man she once loved and hated now sat under her mango tree sipping tea, while his guards stood quietly in the shadows, pretending to be invisible. His presence had turned her humble home into a magnet for gossip and prophecy. But Amina had bigger things to think about. She watched Ife play with the neighborhood boys. His laughter echoed through the village like music. He was her world now, even if only for a few more days. Soon, Chuka would take him away and her heart would break again. She stepped outside and joined Chuka under the tree. He stood when he saw her, his face worn and sincere. "I won't stay where I'm not welcome," he said. Amina remained silent. "I know I can't erase the past, but I want to fix what I can, starting with our son." She gave him a look. "He's not our son. He's your son. I only filled the space someone else left behind." "You did more than that," he said, his voice low. "You taught him how to laugh again. You gave him something even money couldn't buy. Peace." She swallowed hard. He continued, "Come to Lagos with us, even if only for a few days. Let him transition gently. Let him know he's not being taken from a mother. He's being returned to a father." Amina stared at the ground. Her instincts screamed no, but her heart wanted closure. And her soul? It needed peace. "I'll come," she finally said, "but only for Ife, and only for a few days." When their convoy rolled back into Lagos, the press had already heard whispers. Billionaire reunited with lost son. Mystery woman accompanies Ife Okonkwo. Who is she? The compound gates of the Okonkwo estate swung open like the jaws of a castle. Amina had never seen anything so grand. Glass-paneled walls, robotic security arms, a private zoo, and a children's amusement area with actual ponies. But all she saw was Eve's reaction, his wide eyes, his hesitant steps. He held her hand tightly as they entered the marble-floored mansion. Inside, a woman stood waiting. Lillian, Chuka's ex-wife, Ife's mother. She was tall, light-skinned, and elegant, wearing a diamond-studded caftan. Her eyes went first to her son, and then to Amina. Her expression froze. "I see you've brought the village girl," she said coolly. Ife ran into her arms. "Mummy," Amina turned to Chuka. "You didn't tell her I was coming." "I didn't think she needed to know until we arrived," he replied stiffly. Lillian held her son and looked directly at Amina. "Thank you for saving my child, but we'll take it from here." "Lillian," Chuka began. "No, you brought her here. That was your mistake, but she doesn't belong here." Amina smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I don't want to stay." But Ife didn't let go of her hand. "Can Auntie Mama stay with me tonight, please?" Lillian hesitated. "Just one night," Chuka said firmly. Lillian glared, but said nothing. Amina slept in a guest suite that was larger than her entire compound in Ijanla. But despite the gold-plated switches and scented pillows, she didn't feel at home. Not in this palace of secrets. Ife curled up next to her and whispered, "Are you going to leave me now?" She pulled him closer. "No, not yet. But when you go, will you take me again?" Her throat closed. "You belong with your father and your mother. They love you. But they don't laugh like you, or dance when it rains." Tears rolled down her cheeks. You'll teach them. A press conference was called. Chuka stood before the cameras and made the announcement. I thank the heavens and the people of Ijanla, especially one woman, who risked her own safety to protect what mattered most to me. Reporters turned to Amina, who stood quietly by the side, unsure where to look. Chuka continued. I also want to announce something personal. I once lost a good woman because of my pride. Today, I honor her not just as Ife's guardian, but as a woman of grace, strength, and courage. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Chuka stepped aside and invited Amina forward. This is Miss Amina Yusuf. Flashes exploded like lightning. She blinked in the glare, but stood tall. I didn't. Come for praise, she said slowly. I came to return a son to his family. That is all. She walked away before they could ask more questions. Later that evening, Amina packed her bag. Chuka knocked gently. You don't have to go. I do, she said without turning. Stay. We can build something again. You can't build on ruins, Chuka, especially the ones you created. He nodded, understanding. Then let me do one thing right. He handed her a document. What is this? A deed to a house in Abeokuta and a monthly fund. In your name. No strings. She stared at him, stunned. For what? For everything. She took the papers but said nothing. Then she hugged Eve tightly, whispered blessings into his ears, and walked out of the palace-like mansion without looking back. The village welcomed her with song and dancing. Amina the brave. Amina the lioness. Amina who stood before kings and returned as queen. But she said little. She was no queen, just a woman who had loved, lost, and loved again. She sat under her mango tree that evening and watched the sun set, alone, but her heart was whole. Amina settled back into life in Ijanla as if nothing had happened, but everything had changed. She taught her classes, swept her yard, and drank millet porridge under the shade of her old mango tree. But her spirit was heavier now, carrying both peace and pain. She missed Eve, not like a babysitter misses a child, like a mother misses her heartbeat. Each morning, she expected to hear his small feet patter on her doorstep, calling, Auntie Mama, are the eggs ready? But silence answered her instead. Still, she kept her promise. She didn't call, she didn't write, she stayed away. But fate, it seemed, wasn't finished with her. 3 weeks after her return, a black jeep with tinted windows rolled into Ijanla. The villagers ran to the gate, whispering about the latest Lagos stranger. Amina didn't move from where she sat in front of her chalkboard, helping one of her pupils with a math problem. It wasn't until the knock came on her door that she turned. Standing there was a man in a dark suit. He introduced himself. Barrister Jude, legal representative of Chief Chuka Okonkwo. Amina's heart stopped. Is Ife? No, ma'am. He's safe, but the chief isn't. Her knees went weak. What are you saying? The lawyer hesitated. He had a massive stroke 3 days ago. He's alive, but unconscious, critical. The doctors aren't sure he'll make it. Amina sat down slowly, stunned. How did this happen? Stress and overwork. But that's not all. He opened his briefcase and handed her a sealed envelope. This is why I came. The letter inside bore Chuka's signature and a hospital's legal stamp. It was dated just a day before the stroke. As she unfolded it, her hands trembled. To Amina Yusuf. If you are reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say these words in person. I have made grave mistakes in my life, and chief among them was abandoning you when you needed me the most. But I've come to understand that true wealth isn't built in glass towers. It's built in hearts that beat for others. You made my son whole again. You made me human again. I am changing my will. You are not only his guardian, you are now his co-parent. If anything happens to me, you will have legal custody of Ife alongside my mother. I've left you the Ogun State House, full parental rights, and a 30% share in my educational trust, because you are the only person I trust with both his soul and his future. Forgive me. Chuka. Tears rolled down her face. Not because of the money or the rights, but because after everything, he had finally seen her. 3 days later, she stood beside Chuka's hospital bed. Tubes ran from his arms. Machines blinked beside his chest. He looked smaller, weaker, no longer the lion who once roared boardrooms into silence. She took his hand. I forgive you, she whispered, but only because Eve still smiles. And, for a moment, just a flicker, his fingers moved. She felt it. A tear slipped from his eye. Lillian was furious when the updated will was read. This village woman? She spat in court. She has bewitched him. But the court disagreed. The documents were clear. The psychologist reports were firm. Chuka had been of sound mind when he made the changes. Amina wasn't just a footnote in Chuka's story anymore. She was part of its foundation. And so the judge ruled joint custody. Full inheritance rights for Ife. Permanent legal guardianship for Amina if Chuka did not recover. Lillian stormed out, defeated. Later that night, Ife curled up beside Amina and whispered, "Does this mean you're staying?" She kissed his forehead. "It means I'll never leave again." The hospital was quiet. Machines beeped gently beside Chuka's motionless body. Amina visited every day now, sometimes staying for hours, reading to him, praying beside him. She did it not for recognition, not even for closure, but because of Efe, the boy who loved them both. It was during one of these silent vigils that Chuka's mother, Mama Okonkwo, arrived. She was regal, wrapped in an emerald lace buba and jeel, her cane tapping rhythmically on the tiled floor. Her presence made even the nurses stand taller, but she didn't speak to Amina until the room emptied. "Sit, my daughter," she said calmly. Amina obeyed. "You have brought peace into this chaos. I owe you that truth." Mama Okonkwo took a deep breath. "But there is something even Chuka does not know." Amina leaned in. "What is it?" The old woman's voice dropped. "Efe is not his biological son." The words dropped like a hammer in Amina's chest. "What?" she gasped. Mama Okonkwo continued. "Lillian had a long affair. We suspected it even then, but Chuka, desperate to save his marriage, chose to raise the child as his own. When they divorced, he fought for Ife, not because of DNA, but because he loved the boy like his blood." Amina stood up slowly, heart pounding. "Does Ife know?" "No, and he must never, because what makes a father is not blood. It is sacrifice, and Chuka has given him that." Amina's knees weakened, but she remained standing. Then, all this, his will, the court battle, was all for a child who wasn't even his by blood? "Yes," Mama Okonkwo nodded, "and that tells you the kind of man he had become, and the kind of man Ife must grow into." 2 days later, as Amina was reading aloud from Ife's favorite book, The Boy Who Carried the Sky, she felt something. Movement. She froze. Chuka's hand trembled, then his eyelids fluttered. "Chuka," she whispered. His lips parted weakly. "Amina?" she gasped, tears welling in her eyes. "You're awake!" Doctors rushed in. Machines came alive with alarms and charts. Nurses shouted in excitement. But all Amina saw was his eyes opening to her, not with the arrogance of a tycoon, but with the gratitude of a man who had nearly lost everything. Weeks later, Chuka was discharged and welcomed home. Lillian had disappeared from their lives. Mama Okonkwo moved into a smaller home and declared, "Let young hearts build new kingdoms." Amina chose not to return to Ijanla. Instead, she established a charity school in Lagos for children rescued from street homelessness, funded by her new share in the Okonkwo Education Trust. F now had two parents, both chosen by the heart, not by law nor biology. One day, while tucking him in, Ife asked, "Will I ever have a baby brother?" Chuka and Amina exchanged glances. Well, Chuka smiled. "We'll see what the sky brings." Years later, Ife stumbled upon an old envelope in Mama Okonkwo's room, sealed with red wax. It was addressed to Chuka, never opened. He brought it to Amina, curiosity bubbling. She froze when she saw it. Carefully, she opened the brittle letter. Inside was a DNA test result from when Eve was 3. And it confirmed what Mama Okonkwo had said. Chuka was not Efe's biological father. Efe looked up at Amina with wide eyes. "What does it mean?" Amina folded the paper and burned it without a word. Then she held him close. "It means nothing, because you're ours, forever." And in that moment the truth burned to ash, but the bond remained, for love is not in blood, but in choice, and they had chosen each other.